All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the very first Thirsty for Knowledge Thursday. My name is David Durrell, and I'm your service-wide wage grade training manager. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to be part of this first call. These calls are very important. We've set aside a lot of time in highlighting the wage grade community. One thing I want everybody to know during the call, everyone will be muted, but we'll be taking questions. You can put them in the Q&A box. And at the end of the call, we will have a Q&A session where we'll be answering all the questions that we can. If we don't get to all the questions, you can contact me at any time. I'd be happy to work with you on your questions about trainings, whatever you need. Like I said, this is the very first Thirsty for Knowledge Thursday training series, where we'll be having bi-monthly calls to focus on wage grade relevant topics, such as career building, trade, science, and technology advancements. And all of this, again, is directed directly at wage grade employees. We recognize the fact that there was a need that wasn't being taken care of, and we have spent a lot of time to develop the programs and the trainings that we're presenting. We will have these calls on a bi-monthly basis. Topics to be covered during these calls. Today's topic is federal resumes and job applications. On April 17th, we'll have vehicle safety and routine inspections. June 12th, we'll have navigating Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. August 15th, safely surviving summer heat. October the 23rd, navigating Concur and travel. And December the 11th, creating individual development plans, your IDPs. All of these dates, along with the topics, are in the new 2025 FWCA catalog through HPTC. The emails, if any of you are not getting the emails, I've had a lot of emails in the last couple of days, people telling me you're not getting. If you're not getting them, get in touch with me, and I'll make sure you get signed up for the emails. As we develop, we still need to hear from the field. We want to know what you need. We are growing with you and want you to grow with us to help us develop this program, but we want to make sure we're giving you what you need. So we want to hear your ideas. We want to hear what you're doing in the field, what trainings you think you might need. So we're here for you. This whole program, again, is developed for wage grade and maintenance employees. You can contact me at any time, and I'll be happy to help you get any of this going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to HPTC Director Moss Rudley for Moss's Minute, and we'll get the program started. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate the opportunity here to join everyone for our inaugural Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays. As a former wage grade employee and someone who spent his career working 4 10-hour days, Thursday was always a day for remembrance and understanding. So as I've moved the Facility Workforce Career Academy forward, connecting to the field and the wage grade workforce, the Thirsty Thursday was something we piloted for the last 2 years within HPTC and our dispersed staff around the country, and have found quite a great bit of engagement from the field and topics generating, as David said, as we continue this series and expand upon it. I'd like to just take a minute and talk to you about the Facility Workforce Career Academy. As David mentioned, our 2025 catalog is out. It is currently digitally available at our nps.gov site, as well as the PPFL SharePoint site. As we speak, copies are being mailed to all parks across the country. So you should be seeing those arrive in hard copy form to your parks and on those break room tables very shortly. We really appreciate the field's input and the support of the field as we continue to develop our course curriculum and provide those opportunities to the field. It is truly a multi-pronged effort with parks providing part of it, us providing part of it, regions providing part of it. So we are all in this together, and I really appreciate it. I would like to just also take a moment and speak to the workforce about the current environment of the federal workforce and the National Park Service. Our coming Thirsty Thursday is on federal hiring. We're currently in a hiring freeze. I have to mention that, as it is certainly slightly counterintuitive if you would think about it. However, it's actually a really great opportunity to focus back on yourself, your career, your skills, and your abilities to provide your work to maybe the federal government, maybe another employer. But again, these are your skills and your trade and the ability for you, the worker, to give back. So we in the National Park Service have a wonderful mission. We really align well with the current administration's priorities. And I really look forward to the opportunities to train the wage grade workforce as we move into this current year. I know that my workforce is very dedicated to the pride they take in the work that they perform, much like all of you do. So with that, I certainly would want to be cognizant and recognize that we are all in a space together. So to recognize the time as it is a moment, be positive, recognize that having a positive attitude and that training is something that you own independently. It is something that you can take with you wherever you go, and your learning is completely owned by yourself. Here at the Facility Workforce Career Academy and at HPTC, our mission is really to provide those opportunities and as many as we can to you. So certainly it's about the workforce and continuing the great work that the workforce is presenting. The courses that we have listed there are only going to be as good as the participation that we get. If you go back and look, 2 of those are actually going to be posted directly from parks through live stream at a facility, not here on a green screen on a computer. So we are certainly actively looking for field participation, that you may want to sponsor one of these upcoming events. Have our team come out and present directly from your park. Again, field-based opportunities. Our purpose on the Wage Grade Initiative is to get out and visit with you. We're going to continue our video series as well. We've been out in the field filming at a few different parks as we kind of ease into this initiative in the year of 2025. So again, much of this is about you repeating back to us and us getting to hear from you about what your needs are in the field. Certainly, I again ask you to put any questions you may have in the chat for me. If we have any, Mark, would you let me know? And we're certainly going to wait here a little bit moment for Mike Caldwell, the Associate Director, who will be joining us shortly for a little bit of inspirational words and a little bit of piece from the top.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and the Q&A pod. So if you have a question at any time during this, just go ahead. You should see a Q&A icon. You can click on that, type in your question, and we'll either respond directly to you, or we can pass it along to the presenter at the time. So thanks for joining us.
Okay. So federal hiring. it's definitely not the same as private sector hiring. And as a hiring official who's hired in the last many years a whole lot of individuals, the work that Michelle Bratcham is doing and going to present to you today is extremely relevant. As a hiring manager, what do we look for? How do we understand what are they looking for in the federal workforce? What are we looking for in human beings? What are those attributes, the qualities, and the skill sets needed to be in this world? So again, while in a hiring freeze, we still need to think about our careers, where that would go, and how we can advance them. We have to take risks and apply and be willing to put ourselves out there to advance ourselves. So I certainly give all of you the encouragement and recognize that within yourselves, you have the ability to perform at the highest levels that is needed in this current environment. And the Park Service is truly a space for your skills to be utilized for the American public. I would like to, with that, take a moment here and introduce Mike Caldwell. He's the Associate Director for Park Planning, Facilities, and Lands. He serves as my leader, and I find great inspiration in his dedication to the wage grade workforce and all of those individuals performing the daily routine things that happen in the park system. So with that, I turn it over to Mike, and I thank you all for joining us today on Thirsty Thursday.
Great. Thanks, Moss. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on here. I really appreciate the invitation. Just a couple of points, and I think today's topic, I believe, was looking at yourselves, your resumes, all the other things that I'm sure many of us think about a lot. So I have a couple of observations just from 35 years in the Park Service on that topic. But on a more general note, the last time, I think when we had a conversation like this in 2024, I think that was in October, November, I can't even remember now. We had and continue to prioritize the development of our wage grade staff, our facilities related staff. As many of you know, as many of you believe, as well as I believe, you all are the backbone of the National Park Service, and your betterment will remain a priority for PPFL, and we will continue to do what we can to support you both as a group as well as individually. And we will continue to move forward in our training, opportunities like this to develop your skills, and most importantly, to ensure that communication is open, transparent, and is reaching you. And we are always open to suggestions. We're always open to recommendations on a better way to do those things. So please take us up on that. Either myself, Moss, Dave, or any of the team, we welcome your input. Over the past 4 to 5 years now, National Park Service has been fortunate to invest funding in our facilities with the Great America Outdoors Act. Many of you are familiar with that, but as a refresh, President Trump signed the Great America Outdoors Act in August of 2020. It contributes about $1.5 billion a year to assets within the Department of Interior, specifically also National Park Service. And we have been doing investments in things like water, wastewater systems, bridges, roads, these major backbone infrastructure items that have long needed those investments. And as I look at the projects, as I look at the impact, and I'm hopeful you all are seeing some of these, they are making a transformational difference in our assets within the National Park Service. So we have everything from major 80 million to 100 million projects, as well as our maintenance action teams, which many of you also might be familiar with, where a project might be a smaller amount in dollar value, but very, very important for that park, that it is done in a productive way, in a way that provides training and experience for the teams that are putting that project together. We are spending a lot of time making sure we communicate the benefits of the Great America Outdoors Act. As many of you know, the funding expires in FY25. The projects will certainly have a tail that goes into 2030 just based on their size. But we are showing the benefits of the Great America Outdoors Act to folks that are coming in within the new administration, as well as on Capitol Hill. And so, like I just said earlier about sharing information and getting in touch with us, if you have pictures, if you have ideas on how to promote the benefits of the Great America Outdoors Act to folks on Capitol Hill, as well as in the new administration, we welcome that input. We are right now briefing the Great America Outdoors Act to the new administration, its benefits, with the hopes of seeing it promoted as something that the administration would support its reauthorization. Most likely it will get reintroduced by Congress, probably starting in the Senate in the next few months, and we will see where it goes from there. So keep up the great work. I understand that every investment that the National Park Service makes, it's equally important to have that investment in the operations and the maintenance of that asset. And we are doing what we can to communicate that message to those folks that fund the operations of the National Park Service. It's important to make those investments. It's equally important to make those operational investments and prioritize those facility needs, the facility workforce, as we take care of those things into the future. Just on the topic at hand, I have always felt in my career, it was always good. I'm not sure if you went in depth yet on resumes and things like that. Always good to have an updated resume. Just like your smoke alarms or something, try to find a date every year where you update it twice a year. I just think it's good. It's good to refresh it. It's good to be ready when opportunities strike. I know it's an interesting time for us all. Changes are afoot. I know we read a lot of different things out there. I think our leadership here in Washington, led by Jessica Bowerman, is doing a great job at communicating at the right time with the information that's accurate and what we know through your leadership teams at the regions and the parks. And we're doing what we can here to make sure that the needs of the facility workforce are met both today and into the future. So Moss, Mark, I'm not sure if we have a Q&A session for this, but I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate you all being a part of this and look forward to the Thursdays going forward.
Yeah, Mike, we do have a Q&A pod. We'll be collecting those. And certainly if folks have questions for Mike, he's always available and we will get those directly and get those answers back to you all. So certainly your words are very helpful, Mike, and we thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Moss and Mike. I want to tell everybody on this call, you don't know how important these two people have been in getting this program going. If you see them, get a chance to tell them thank you, because those two are the driving force behind this whole wage grade initiative that we're pushing. They have done a lot of work behind the scenes to get us to where we are today. And I really appreciate the work both of them are doing, because it makes my job easier. So with that, it's time to move into today's presentation. Michelle Bratson will be doing the federal resumes and job applications. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, David. And thank you to everybody on this call for investing in yourselves and being here to talk about resumes during this kind of slightly awkward time during the freeze. But I really liked Mike's analogy of the smoke alarm, that now is as good of a time as any to be focusing on this. Your skills in the wage grade sector are so important and valuable and are highly needed within the federal government and beyond. So yes, thank you for being here. A little background on myself. I work for the Historic Preservation Training Center I help coordinate internship programs to bring future wage grade and related facility management people into the workforce. And through that, I help with resume assistance and understanding usajobs.gov. I started as an intern myself, so I understand the need to better understand the complexity of the system and really what even is a federal resume. So moving forward, today we'll talk about federal resumes and then USA Jobs, and we'll have some time at the end for questions. If you have any questions throughout, please do put them in the Q&A pod, and Mark can interrupt me and we can address those because this training is really for you all. And there's a lot to talk about for resumes and USA Jobs. So definitely want to answer the questions that you all have. And then also, before we dive in, just to note that I am not a human resource official, so I don't have all the answers. I did create this original presentation with the help of human resources, so their input is dispersed throughout. But if they do have any specific questions, I can definitely funnel those on to them after our call. All right, so with that, let's dive into resumes. So if you could just pop in that Q&A or chat box, whatever you have access to, what is the current state of your federal resume? So option 1, you could type a 1 if your answer is don't ask, I haven't even started yet. I'm pretty sure most people probably have at least something that got you into your initial wage grade position. But maybe number 2 would be, I think it's okay, I think it's going to work. And then number 3 would be, my resume is so good that we could use it for examples for future trainings. And Mark, I don't know if you can see kind of what people are responding, if there's a general consensus of how people are feeling about their resumes today.
So Michelle, it looks like some folks are having trouble with the Q&A pod, so just go ahead and put it in the chat if you're having problems, and I will pass them on to you.
Did we get any, Mark, or is that also
Nothing
kind of
yet.
maybe that one's only internal or something? The Q&A
Okay,
pod
I've
is made for
got a few now. So I'm a solid 2, couple of 2s. There's proudly a 3B.
Nice.
All right.
Please send it to me.
So yeah, and I've got a couple of 2s, so it looks like most people are in the 2 realm.
All right. Well, that is excellent news. I am glad that we are up into the 2 that you've started. That's sometimes the hardest hurdle. So great work. So diving in, why are resumes important? Probably you all know this, but just a refresher that when applying to the federal government, it is the first document that hiring officials see. So it's really the first impression that you have. So how you present yourself, the word choice you use, how you organize, how professional you make this one document look, really has a big impact on whether or not you can move forward for the interview process and getting the position. So important to spend lots of time, as it's like that initial step into the federal government. So what is a federal resume? As a reminder, just a comparison to business resumes. When I first started, this is like totally different. I thought maybe even a federal resume should have a different name besides a resume, because for federal resumes, the length can be 5 or more pages. It doesn't have to be long, that's not the point, but the kinds of details that need to be included in order to qualify you for the positions you're applying for oftentimes require more than 2 pages. There is required information that if you forget to put it, like the start date and the end date to your positions or the number of hours you work per week, if you don't include that information, then human resources cannot give you credit for that experience. So making sure that that required information is there is very important. Also, the format for a federal resume can be whatever makes the most sense to best tell your story and explain what you've done and your past skill sets and how that applies to your future position. So that format could consist of kind of like bullets and short kind of descriptions, same as a business resume, but could also include like a little summary describing the context of the work that you did or some past experience. Then kind of like categorizing into sections is also encouraged because of the length of the federal resume. Additionally, as many details as possible are encouraged as opposed to the business resumes that are very short. And we'll get into kind of what those details look like and some examples of how to substantiate your resume beyond just the kind of the description of what it was that you did. And as a lot of you have said that your resume was a level 2, you probably already realize that they take a long time to build. So definitely getting started on that now is good for, preparing that smoke alarm for when the fire comes is a smart idea. So key sections for how to organize your resume. A note within usajobs.gov, you can use the resume builder that will kind of walk you through these sections, or you can also upload your own Word document. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, resumes aren't black and white. There's no just like one correct way. I've talked to several different hiring managers. Some prefer an uploaded document and some prefer the resume builder. So I think kind of whatever you're most comfortable with is okay, as long as you have the information that we talk about in today's training. But definitely make sure that you have your name and contact information at the top. Include any education that you've had. For WG positions, it's really the experience that's looked at, but it is good to show what education and training that you have. If in any of your classes you did hands-on work, group work, projects, things that could count as experience, you could expand upon that in your experience section. Like when I was in school, I know one of my classes was like a month-long class where we actually went out and did range management and took measurements on trees and looked at forest health. So I took kind of that experience. It was technically in education, but kind of couched it as an experience because I was doing hands-on work. So for GS, that can definitely, or for WG positions, that can definitely be an option. So for that experience section, definitely make that as detailed as you can and include both paid and unpaid experience there. Then kind of to show above and beyond, maybe if there's a lot of candidates with similarly great experience, having a section with your qualifications and certifications is another way to help you stand out. You could also integrate those into your experience and talk about when and how you use those different certifications. But calling that out in its own section, I think, especially for the hiring manager, can look really good. That shows that maybe you went above and beyond to get those, and you could also hit the ground running because you have those. If you're planning to take a certification or qualification and you're not quite done at the time you apply, you could still note that you're planning to take that, and we'll have that completed before you start. Additionally, you could add a section for personal interests. I like this one because if there's something you've done on your own time that kind of can reconfirm your passion, or if there's certain like physical factors mentioned in that job description, like your work is outside in hot weather, or can you lift heavy things? You could kind of address some of those requirements by saying that you've done those things on your personal time, whether that's like carried a heavy backpack while you're backpacking long miles, or you enjoy doing carpentry and you built a deck for a friend. Kind of shows like you're using those skills beyond kind of those professional experiences as well. And that could also help you stand out from other candidates. And then last, for your federal resume, it's also important to include references. That's not usually a part of the business resume and feels kind of strange, but for those, it's recommended to include at least 3 professional references. Make sure you have their telephone numbers, their email addresses, and it could be helpful to hiring managers to say how you know them. So like if they were a supervisor, a mentor, a coworker, an employee, and it could also be good to include a few supervisors, coworkers, and employees to kind of show and provide that 360 reference of how you are and relate with everybody that you work with. And then you could also include some personal references on there if you want, but the minimum would be that those 3 professional references. This can become important too, because as those of you who have applied recently, have seen. Sometimes jobs are only posted for like a day and they fill up. And then you could have a lot of applicants. And when parks are in a hurry to select somebody for that position, if they're having to make calls and connect with all the references of applicants, if they have trouble reaching one of your references, that could be a reason for them to move on to another candidate who is also really good and qualified if their references are easier to contact. So definitely make sure that the references you provide are know that they're on there and that they're available to be contacted. So how should I organize my resume? Because resumes can be 5 or 10 pages, and depending on how many years of experience you have, it becomes extra important to organize. One thing that you can do is to highlight your relevant experience. So anything that, like, I like to think through all of the duties that I did in my previous positions, and then pull up those duties that are most relevant to the job you're applying to and put those at the top of that category. So within each position, kind of think through what different things did I do for these previous jobs and which ones of those will look best and are the most important for this job that I really want. So try to put those on the top. And then you can also use categories like this person used building ground maintenance and put all of their duties pertaining to building ground maintenance in that category, and then equipment maintenance and use kind of separated out. And that way, instead of having just a whole list of a lot of different examples, they're kind of spelled out by category, which can help both human resources and the hiring official find the experience that you have that's relevant. So yeah, consider using bullets and headings. In addition, another way to work on your long resume is to substantiate it. So instead of just telling what you did, really talk about how you did it. What's the context behind it? Was it in a hot climate? Was it at a busy park? Were you the leader? What kind of additional aspects went into the work that you did? So use concrete details that show the HR official that you know the job and that you can do the job. Definitely think about those transferable skills, but don't exaggerate your skills beyond what you actually did. So let's take a look at a few examples of how you can show kind of more than just what you did. So on a lot of resumes, you'll see I painted the boathouse wall, which is great, and that shows what you did. But for human resources who've never maybe painted a structure or don't know what that would entail, and also for a hiring official who might want to know some more specifics about the kind of painting that you've done, what kinds of things could you add to that to make it more detailed? So a few ideas would be, you could say, I selected appropriate paint based on historic paint analysis. And you could also say that you utilized angled paintbrushes to paint a historic boathouse wall. And then you could also add in kind of some of those other factors, like looks like maybe a ladder was involved, like what kind of safety was required, and did you support a culture of safety? Did you do it as a team, or were you working independently and you had to kind of be self-organized? So think about all those kind of details that surround just the actual painting itself. For another example, instead of just rehabilitate window frames, which is great, but again, doesn't kind of say the amount of work or maybe the complexity that went into this task, you could say rehabilitate 16 historic window frames using a heat gun to remove old paint while wearing proper personnel protective equipment, or PPE. So again, that's just putting a little bit more detail in there. I've also seen, and HR said, this is good up to a point, but like they put 16 historic window frames. So if you have a number of how many trails, how many miles of trails you worked on, how many people were a part of your program, how many windows you did, those kinds of numbers can help show complexity and how much you did, as well as kind of some of those other contextual context clues we talked about. So a few other tips besides kind of adding those additional details to your work. HR kind of said some of their best practices would be to, when organize your resume, organize it in chronological level or level of importance. But I've heard mostly the hiring officials like chronological levels. So even if your most recent job wasn't the most relevant job to the one you're applying to, you could still leave it on the top of your resume so that everything is in order of when you worked, and that way they can kind of see the flow of your work history. If your most recent position wasn't the most relevant one to the one you're applying to, you could put a little summary at the top of your resume, kind of summarizing all of your relevant experience so that that's the first thing somebody would see. So that's one idea. And then also HR said include all relevant experience. So even if it's old, even if it maybe happened in high school, but even if you're using those tools that are required or any of those software systems or equipment or machines, any kind of experience that you've ever had in your life, that all counts. So put that on your resume within that experience with the start date, end date, and hours per week so that you get credit for it. And as opposed to business resumes, it is okay to repeat experience. So sometimes when human resources is looking to quantify your experience, they want to see maybe you have 3 years of doing a certain task. So if you've worked 3 seasons doing the same thing, include that in your resume. One thing you could do if you've done kind of the same job for 3 seasons in a row would be, you could say, refer to the previous season. I did those duties, and in addition, and then just list the new duties that you did as you go along each year for your seasons. Also, to make sure to define industry-specific vocabulary. So a lot of the work that GS employees do is very specific, and I come from a background in environmental education, so a lot of times I would throw out acronyms that make sense to me, but human resources doesn't know what the 5E model is or kind of that specific vocabulary. So that's okay to use, but just make sure that you define it. And if you do use any acronyms for systems or tools or anything, spell out what that acronym means. And then, like we talked about, resumes are the very first thing anybody ever sees. So make sure that you edit, make sure it looks professional, organized. The font is all the same. The bullets are in line. And yeah, and it looks professional. One thing I like to do is have somebody outside of my work group look over my resume before I submit it. That way they might be able to point out some vocabulary that I might have forgotten to correct that they don't understand, and look at grammar and sentence structure and all of those components just to make sure that it looks very professional. And then the reminder that when an application is due, that would be at midnight Eastern time. So if you're not on Eastern time, make sure that you submit your application with plenty of time to spare. I've uploaded documents, and sometimes I have to go through like a scanning process, and that can take a long time. So make sure that you have everything uploaded well in advance. Human Resources also said some of the common mistakes that they see are that there could be a missing month, day, or year in the working experience. So if you do use that resume builder, it will make sure that you include that information for each position. But even if you have the best experience ever and you forget to put the month that you started and the day or year or those hours per week, then they can't give you credit for it. So like if you put, for the next one, it lists those definite hours that you worked per week. So if you put a range like 10 to 20 hours per week, you would just get credit for 15 hours because they're not sure where that would be. So definitely do your best at listing the concrete hours per week. Also, if your resume is not detailed enough to support your answers in the questionnaire, that would be a mistake to avoid. And remember not to include a photo of yourself, even if you're really, really good looking, because if you have a photo in your resume, they unfortunately, Human Resources cannot forward the resume to the hiring official. And then don't forget to include your transcripts and any kind of supporting document that you're using to apply. So a federal resume example, I'm going to try to share one. So, okay. Are you able to see this?
We can
resume
see it.
example?
It's a little bit small, so you may need to zoom in, Michelle, but yeah, I see it now. That's
How's
good.
that? Okay, cool. So with all this talk about what a federal resume is, here is an example. And again, there's lots of ways you could organize. There's lots of ways that you could do your resume in it. And it kind of depends on who your audience is and what they're looking for. But here at the top, they've got their contact information for how to reach them. They've got their education, their academic achievement here. In that area, you can also submit your transcript. So if you could include anything besides like your course names, like anything that's relevant, like some of that hands-on work or group work or anything else that you might want to highlight, you could put that in your academic achievement. Relative coursework, again, so here was maybe like some of the classes that were relevant to the job that this person applied for. And then here's their work experience section. So they've got the title of their job, the address, they've got the dates they work, their hours per week. You can include your pay rate, you don't have to. If you can include your supervisor's information and contact information, that's always great. Here they did do a little narrative, just kind of describing what their job was all about. They kept it concise, but it's there on top to kind of get a big picture of what they did. And then they've got their duties, accomplishments, and related skills highlighted here. They also, it's always good in resumes to start each duty with an action word. So they performed, they interpreted, and they developed. So any kind of action word you can start your bullet points with is good. Then they go down to that next position chronologically, kind of the same heading. They've got their duties, accomplishments, and skills here. And then if we kind of scroll through all of their positions, sorry if this is making you a little dizzy. You could also add, so here's like skills and certifications here, that kind of section that you could add to look kind of above and beyond other applicants. If you've gotten any awards or honors, you could call those out. There's your personal interest section that you could add, and then what your references might look like who they are, what their role is, how to contact them, and how they're related to you.
All right. So Catherine is asking, what if our direct supervisor has since retired? I think that's
Good
back
question.
when you were talking about, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you have a supervisor, it's always great when they can be contacted. That's totally fine. You can put retired. If you're still in touch with them and they're comfortable being a reference, you could still provide their personal cell phone as long as you've checked with them that that's okay. If not, you can always put retired. And if there's anybody else you worked with on the job, I would try to include somebody else who could talk to the work that you did in that position. Good question.
All right. And then we have another one. What about the use of a chat bot to look at the resume?
Great question. This is the first chatbot question I've had. Yeah, I think that would be smart and that you could definitely do that, and that I would review it for sure after and make sure that it fits, that it looks professional, that it fits the true duties that you've done and what you're hoping to do, and that the grammar and everything works. But yeah, I would say use technology to your advantage if you can.
All right, I think that's it. There is a couple of questions about the sample resume. We will be providing these later on. We'll probably put them in the chat box, yes, and then also I'll be posting this and those and the video of this webinar on DOI talent in the future. I think that's it, Michelle.
Cool. All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to USA Jobs and the federal hiring process. So next question for you all, how many hours have you spent on usajobs.gov? 0, what is usajobs.gov? Maybe just about 10, 200, or like 3,000, way too many hours. The more that we can get in there and explore and practice and figure out how this works, the more effective we can use it. So you've all used it successfully in order to get your jobs now, but we can talk about some of the different aspects just to kind of improve the use of the system. So we'll first start by talking about the steps to the process. This is important to kind of understand timing and the different audiences behind the process. The first step is USA Jobs. So when you're first applying to a position, you go into usajobs.gov, you create your profile, and that's where you're going to upload all your documents to apply to open positions. Now you can also make your resume searchable. So when you upload your resume, you can click on that so that people can, with open positions, can actually seek you out for an open position, which is really cool. A note on the timing for the system is that jobs usually post around 6 months in advance. Sometimes I know they'll announce a bunch of jobs at once. If you can find out, or if that's happening, if you know that date, that can be helpful. And then currently too, a lot of positions will be open until a certain number of applicants apply. So like it might be limited just to 50 or 100 applicants, which could mean that some jobs close within even just a day. So definitely jobs are usually posted at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So if you get on usajobs.gov and check for jobs daily, that can be a good practice, especially around that time frame when they're being posted. Also, just a note about the USA job system. I've heard some myths that there's keyword searches in your resume for determining whether or not you're qualified. But this part of the system is just automated, and it's based on how you rate and rank yourself on the occupational questionnaire that you submit with your hiring package. I know for some positions and at some time there was an additional questionnaire that would be sent out, and the rating to that is also accounted for in this automated initial part if you do end up having to take that other assessment. So that's a little bit of the background of how the system works. And then the second piece of this would be decoding the announcement. So how do you know if you qualify for a job, and what skills do you need to highlight? So we can take a second now in this first step of USA Jobs to look at an announcement. So I'm going to pull up this example job announcement, which is still on usajobs.gov, even though it's not currently being recruited for. So it is a good opportunity to go on there and to look for what jobs are being recruited for at some point. So just the overview, it talks about the opening date, the closing date. Lots of times they're not open for that long. They might talk about that applicant cap number, how much money you would make, your GS level, or the WG level. So WG5 would be like an entry level position. So that's important to look at. How many vacancies and the location. You can look at the appointment type. So whether it's a seasonal position, that'd be like 6 months or less, the term up to 3 years, and then permanent position, whether it's a full-time or part-time, competitive service, no promotional. Then I just wanted to point out here, this part is very important, who this job is open to, because if it's not open to you, it's not worth applying to, because unfortunately you won't make it through the system. So for here, most positions are open to CTAP or people who are displaced federal employees. This one is open to the public. So that means that's open to anybody, including if you are not currently a permanent federal employee. So that's important to look for. And then you might see other special hiring authorities. So if you're a veteran, that's something on usajobs.gov. You can look at all these different hiring authorities. If you're a veteran, if you have a disability, if you've graduated within the past few years, or if you've worked seasonally for 24 months or more within the span of 2 years, well, without a break of service of 2 years, those are all special hiring authorities that you could qualify for, that could help you look for positions that are less competitive, that are not open to just everybody in the public. So that's an important section there. And then down here are all of the duties. I'm just kind of scrolling through this for the purpose of this training, but if I was really applying to this position, I would read this announcement very thoroughly at least once, because there's little details in here that we wouldn't want to miss when we're applying. Again, down here, I wanted to just show for WG, there's no substitution of education. So it's all experience-based. Again, physical demands are addressed in here. So if you can include any kind of experience you have related to the physical demands mentioned in the announcement, that can be helpful, as well as the working conditions. And then down here, there's always a section, how you will be evaluated. So in this section, there oftentimes is a list of bullets. And that is where, when we categorize our job duties from previous experiences, where we can come up with some of those category titles. So the how you'll be evaluated section are really those skills that the hiring manager wants you to have when you start the job. They want you to be able to do that, to hit the ground running. So for this position, if I was applying to it, I might have a section about ability to maintain and use tools, maybe technical practices, and let's see. And maybe, ability to interpret instructions could be another section. So you could kind of take those, you could combine a few or split them out more if you need to, just as kind of header categories for your resume. Also, benefits and required documents are addressed here. And for those of you who haven't found this sometimes hiding in here, in the how to apply section, you can always preview that application questionnaire. So that's where you can see the different specific questions where you'll have to rank yourself. And again, because this is the USA job, the automated part of the system, if you rate yourself highly enough on those questions, you will move forward to the next step. So definitely when you're going through there, do your best to rate yourself as high as possible. I think we tend to be kind of overly humble when we fill that out. Think about what is the grade level that you're applying to, and what does that mean in terms of being an expert? And could you do it when you started the job? Or have you had experience that is similar, even if it's not exactly the same context, to be able to rate yourself high enough to make it to that next step? When you're previewing the questionnaire, another thing I like to do is for each question, try to put something as relevant as possible to that question in your resume, so that when human resources is looking through it and the hiring official, they can directly make that connection of, oh yeah, this is the experience that they said that they had from that questionnaire. So that's another great spot to know kind of what details to include in your resume. And then down here is the contact information for the HR official. That can be helpful if you aren't referred to the position or have questions about referral. You can always reach out just to see if they could give you any advice or information, like if it's something simple, like you forgot to put your hours per week or something like that. But you can always get in touch with them if you need to. And I think that was everything to look at on the announcement. So next step would be if you do rate yourself high enough, and if you have that extra assessment and you do well, then your information and resume will be forwarded on to human resources. So for this step, this is the first step that's not automated, where real human is looking at your resume. And at this point, they're really looking at your answers to that questionnaire, and they're matching it to your resume. And they're saying, yes, they said they're an expert in this, and where is it on their resume? So this is where it's important that if you do rate yourself highly, you back it up in your resume with enough detail, showing that you can do that skill and you do have that experience. And if human resources finds that, then they pass your resume on to the selecting official, also known as like the hiring official, or your future supervisor. So this is the person that makes that final selection. And they're typically using your resume as well as any other documents you submitted, like a cover letter, to make this decision. It can be, I've heard like hiring officials can get stacks of over like 100 applications. And so it can be challenging to make the decision of who to give the offer to. So keep in mind that they usually spend only about 5 minutes on the initial review of the resume, which is kind of crazy with how much time and effort it takes to create one of these documents. But that's why, again, going back to the importance of organizing, putting those little summaries so that they can kind of see the highlighted accomplishments that you have or the context of your work, and kind of putting things in chronological order so it's easy to follow is important. So kind of looking at this too, where when we write our resume, we're writing it for the two different audiences. One is the human resources, where we have to have all of the specific information, the start dates, the end dates, the specific experience to qualify us for the job itself, and to kind of get passed on to the selecting official, who then is looking beyond that to see who has the most experience, who is passionate about this, who has experience and is a good team player, and kind of those above and beyond, maybe some of the soft skill pieces, which is why it's important to include those in our resume as well. So kind of tricky, and yeah, we don't know, unless you do know the selecting official, kind of what they're looking for in that resume. But thinking through those two audiences can help you decide what details to include in your resume. And yeah, I've got lots of questions of, should I submit a cover letter? And more often than not, hiring managers say that it is a good way for people to show that they are very excited about the position and they're passionate about it, and kind of describe why they're applying, and can help them stand out above other applicants. And similarly, if you find out who the hiring official is, if you could call or message them just to explain your interest and enthusiasm, that could also be helpful. So one other pointer, in addition to understanding the system and how USA Jobs works, working on our resume, making sure that's ready to go, would be thinking through your dream job. So a strategy for this would be to find an application, like a job posting on usajobs.gov, or any site that would be something that you really want to do. Maybe like the next step, like where do you want to go next? So then go ahead and look at that and think about look at all of the different skills required for that position, and then kind of cross-reference that to your resume and think through what are you missing. And at that point, once you have that list of what those skills are that you don't yet have, make a plan for how to get those skills. So maybe that requires going back to school, taking a certificate, getting some more education, or hands-on experience to get that skill. Also approaching your current supervisor to see, is there anything that you could do in your current job to take on some extra responsibilities to get that experience? Also, could you volunteer someplace else, intern, or like another job even to get those different experiences under your belt? Same thing with using the occupational questionnaire. If you're in usajobs.gov and you find that job that you want, you could print out the occupational questionnaire, look through all of what's required there, and start doing your best to gain those skills and experience, so that when you do apply for that job, it'll be easy for you to click that you're an expert because you've already done it. Another new piece that is helpful is that you can now connect with the national recruitment team. This is a new office as of, I think, last year, but they say they remind us, make sure that your resume is searchable in usajobs.gov. You can also contact them by emailing them at nationalrecruitmentteam@nps.gov. And you can put in that subject, please add me to the NPS talent pools. And then within that email, the body of the email, you can list the careers that you're interested in, the locations, and your email. And that way, if any position opens up within that field, then they could actually reach out to you and let you know that that's open. So that is another opportunity. So for summary, crafting your federal resume is an investment in you. Yeah, weird time to be working on it, but definitely take the time, and then you're ready to go when systems reopen and your skills are valuable. So that I hope you do that. Federal resumes are written for those two different audiences. So when you're adding those details, make sure to add those specifics for HR and all the required details, as well as those above and beyond how you're a good fit or add new skills to the team for the hiring official. Use the USA job announcement, especially that how you will be evaluated section and the occupational questionnaire. Look through that to focus your resume and to tailor it to that specific position, and use concrete details to prove your skills. So really describing what you've done, showing somebody else your resume, and asking them what questions they might have so you could expand upon your skills can help for that. So with that, thank you again for attending. We can now have some time for question and answer.
All right, we've got a couple here, Michelle. I'll pass them along. So Lisa says, I am currently a WG worker looking to possibly branch out into a similar area of work, something related. Where would I find a listing of all national park positions and their descriptions, even if they aren't currently hiring for that position?
Good question. So looking to move parks, and that I don't know, and maybe anybody else on this call, feel free, maybe David or Mark, you might know, but I'm not sure that there is a list that exists of all positions at all parks. But one thought would be, if there's a certain place that you are interested in, reaching out to them to see what they would have available. Does anybody have anything else they would want to add from our team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like you said, there's probably not a listing of all positions available at all parks, but you could reach out to the park, ask to look at their org chart. You maybe check on Inside MPS and look at some org charts, things like that. And also just follow Inside MPS. There's always the job postings that are there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would add that our Microsoft 360 Office suite and the way it is designed, if you know somebody at a park, you can go in there and look their name up. And then the organizational structure is within the system framework. So if you happen to know the superintendent, you can then go see what positions are down listed below that, all through the Bison Connect email system, which is actually really, really cool. You see what positions they are, what at the park, and how that organizational structure at that park is generally laid out. So some of this open source technology and our systems have opened the door, as long as you kind of know where to go look for it.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle, Charles is asking, I've reformatted my resume more times than I can count, expanded as much as I possibly could, and included anything that could possibly be relevant to the positions I've applied to. I've never gotten through the filters to get my resume in front of a person. I gave up on trying 6 years ago. The only reason I currently have my job in the MPS is because of a local hire program where I could physically hand a copy of my resume and promise and speak with a person. My resume looks a little less than the example you gave earlier. Honestly, the resume looks like a gold standard, but you said that it would be A. How do you expand further?
Yeah, I'm sorry you've had that experience. That's really frustrating. And yeah, not being in HR, I might not know exactly what's going on, but I put my email down here. If you would like to send me a resume, I'm happy to look at it for sure. And yeah, if you have people at your park or that you've worked with who are also willing to take a look, I think that would be helpful. One idea too is, if you get in the system and you try again, and if you don't get through, contacting that HR person whose contact information is at the bottom of the announcement, to ask them what might be going on. They might be able to provide some feedback. And then also just thinking through with that first part of the system, the usajobs.gov, how you rate yourself will determine if you make it to that next step of having human resources even look at your resume. So maybe thinking through how you're rating yourself, and if you could rate yourself more highly, or maybe look into jobs in a different area would be some initial thoughts. But yeah, definitely happy to talk to you more. My email is here. You can get in touch with me if you'd like to. And yeah, if anybody else from our team also has additional things to add, feel free.
I would, all those are good. I would add to, I've had success in the past when I'm ready to apply for a position. I will have someone like Michelle or someone that is pretty good at this stuff. Not only look at your resume, but look at the posting for the job to make sure that you have in your resume what the job announcement is asking for. Because I've known a couple of times I've missed just a small thing here or there, and that could really help you out.
Mhm.
Okay, next question is, what's the best way to get into contact with a hiring manager if they aren't listed on the job posting? I feel I can make hiring managers uncomfortable by calling them.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you apply to the position, it's just the human resource official who's on that announcement. But you can, kind of like Moss talked about, if you have access to Teams, you can go in and kind of look at that park if you know somebody and be able to find out who that position is, or even call the park and ask who is in that position and if they're willing to share their email or phone number. And in talking to hiring officials, the majority said that it's rare that they get a call or an email, so that helps people stand out when somebody is proactive and takes that extra effort to find them and to express their interest. But also being sure that when you make that contact, to have a clear description of why you're interested, and kind of knowledge and background about that position to make a positive first impression, and also not to call repeatedly, which I think could be uncomfortable, or if they're busy, that could be hard, but like a single phone call or email, just expressing your interest is usually seen as positive. But like you alluded to too, resumes aren't black and white, and it depends on who that person is. So definitely something to keep in mind.
All right, thanks. Catherine is asking, would you generally suggest bullet points versus blocks for our job details?
Great question. So yeah, my typical strategy, and again, I think this is a great question that you could ask to lots of different people and see what everybody says. But I think bullet points are easier to read. Like if you're a hiring official and you have 100 resumes and they're all 10 pages long, like how can you organize your resume in the most efficient way possible for that hiring official to pull out your key skills and qualifications quickly? So bullet points I find are easier than like a block of text, maybe with that little summary, contextualizing what those are above them. And if you have a whole page of bullet points, trying to categorize those based on that job announcement for the position would be my personal opinion. But again, ask everybody.
Sometimes nothing like finishing a job a few minutes early, especially on a Thursday. So, with that, I certainly wanted to thank all the participants from the field. Please reach out. We recognize that technology doesn't always work as best as it can for us, or we're not the best at using it. But we continue to try to connect, and we'll reach out. If there's anything else we can do, we'll go from there. Thank you so much, and talk to everyone soon.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you back here on April 17th for vehicle safety and routine inspections. Thank you all.
Thank you.